in a short while. I request you all to be kindly seated, and the mobile phones may please be switched off or kept on silent mode. Our chief guest of honor, and the keynote speaker, Shri Gurcharan Das, have arrived in the hall. In tandem with the Indian tradition of Atithi Devo Bhava, Principal ADG ma'am and ADG sir have accompanied them on the stage. Please put your hands together to welcome all the dignitaries on the dais. Thank you. Special Secretary and Member, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, Srimati Sangeeta Sharma ma'am. Honorable Keynote Speaker, Shri Gurcharan Das sir. Principal DG, Directorate General of Vigilance, Srimati Suchitra Sharma ma'am. Dean IIT Delhi, Professor PVM Rao. Head of the National Resource Center for Value Education in Engineering, IIT Delhi, Srimati Purnima Singh. Officers of the CBIC, faculty, and students of IIT Delhi, dear colleagues and friends, a very good afternoon. We have gathered here today to celebrate the Vigilance Awareness Week 2022. The theme for this year is Corruption-Free India for a Developed Nation. While there are numerous punitive ways to tackle the evil of corruption, the preventive mechanisms are even more important. In this context, not only the knowledge of ethics, but also its application form the bedrock of the desired behavior in public service. In this context, we have gathered here to celebrate this week. To make this afternoon a blessed one, we invoke Goddess Saraswati by kindling the lamp of knowledge and wisdom. For seeking the choicest blessings for the same, I invite the dignitaries on the dais, Principal ADG, Srimati V. Usha ma'am, to accompany them to kindle the lamp.
Shubham karoti kalyanam arogyam dhana sampada shatrubuddhi vinashaya deepajyoti namostute. Shubham karoti kalyanam arogyam dhana sampada shatrubuddhi vinashaya deepajyoti namostute. Shubham karoti kalyanam
Thank you all. विश्वास के बल पर तय हो जीवन का सफ़र, दीप तुम जलते रहना यूं ही निरंतर, दीप तुम जलते रहना यूं ही निरंतर. A sapling is a symbol of new energy and growth. Therefore, I request Shrimati V. Usha Ma'am, Principal Additional Director General, North Zonal Unit of Directorate General of Vigilance, to welcome our chief guest, Srimati Sangeeta Sharma Ma'am, Special Secretary to Government of India and member CBIC, with a sapling. Thank you, ma'am. I request Shri Pranesh Pathak sir, Principal ADG, DGOV Headquarters, to welcome eminent author and distinguished speaker Shri Gurcharan Das with a sapling. Thank you, sir. I now request Shri Girraj Prasad Meena, Additional Director General, NZU, to welcome Srimati Suchitra Sharma Ma'am, Principal Director General, Directorate General of Vigilance, with a sapling. Thank you, sir. Our today's guest of honor is Srimati Suchitra Sharma Ma'am. Ma'am is an IRS officer of 1987 batch and a postgraduate in philosophy from Delhi University. In a career spanning more than 35 years, Ma'am has looked after CGST commissionerates in Delhi, Lucknow, Kanpur, and so on. She has also worked as ADG of Directorate General of Revenue Intelligence at Lucknow. Ma'am has also worked as CVO of EIL, GAIL, and ONGC also. I now request Ma'am to deliver a welcome address for all of us, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shrimati Sangeeta Sharma, member admin CBIC, Shri Gurcharan Das, celebrated author and keynote speaker for today's session, CBIC officials and their family members, and IIT Delhi's faculty and students. A very welcome to all of you. As part of the CVC's Vigilance Awareness Week 2022, Director General of Vigilance has taken this initiative of organizing an interactive session by Shri Gurcharan Das on the theme of the difficulty of being good in public service. The topic of this talk seems to be very relevant in day-to-day functioning of government offices, and more so in the vigilance setup, where both a humane as well as a practical approach is needed while investigating and examining the conduct of our officials. The topic also resonates well with the theme of CVC's Vigilance Awareness Week, that is Corruption-Free India for a Developed Nation. Our keynote speaker today, Shri Gurcharan Das, does not require an introduction. His book, based on the classical Indian goals of the ideal life, has been well admired by the readers. I hope that today's audience, both the physical one present here as well as the virtual one who have joined us through the YouTube broadcast link, get to benefit from his knowledge and experience. Directorate General of Vigilance is grateful to Shri Gurcharan Das for accepting our invitation and agreeing to enrich us all with his knowledge and wisdom. I would also like to inform our audience that CVC in the recent past have been very appreciative of the CBIC's working and disposal of the disciplinary matters, and the credit for the same largely goes to our chief guest, Shrimati Sangeeta Sharma, member admin CBIC, who with her visionary leadership and guidance has extolled each one of us to deliver our best. She has been at the forefront of the board's endeavors to ensure that the overall welfare of CBIC's workforce. Ma'am, we are so honored to have you amongst us as a chief guest for the evening. So with these words and without further ado, let us listen to our distinguished speaker for the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for welcoming all the guests and putting in perspective today's event. Now, coming to the heart and soul of the event, let us hear from Shri Gurcharan Das about the difficulty of being good in public service. Mr. Das graduated with honors in philosophy from Harvard University and later on attended Harvard Business School. He had an illustrious corporate career and was the CEO of P&G India and later on Managing Director P&G Worldwide. At the age of 50, he took early retirement to become a full-time writer and speaker. Having reached the echelons of corporate and literature, he is also well-known management guru. Now, please give a round of applause to such an illuminating personality who is among us today to share his thoughts with us. Please, sir.
Okay. Shall I go there? Shall I come here? Well, I've got a mic, so we'll. Well, you do me honor to invite me, both IIT, CBIC, and it's particular honor because I come, like many of you, from a middle class family. My father worked for the government. My brother was actually an IRS official. He worked in direct taxes and he retired as the chief commissioner here in Delhi and then was the ombudsman of income tax in Bombay. And he has recently actually written a book called The Moral Compass, for which I have been privileged to write an introduction. And it is stories that he tells because he was with the Vigilance. He worked under Vittal when Vittal was the CVC. And so he tells some of those stories in that book which just came out this year by HarperCollins. Anyway, today with this, when I was growing up, the best thing that could happen to you was to get a job in the government. But today young people have many choices. And it is really, in a way, sad because the best and brightest in the country do not want to join the government anymore. In fact, a few months ago, I met a very senior, a former cabinet secretary, in fact, who was telling me that he had just been to see a colleague who was very sad because he had asked his son, why don't you sit for the IAS? And the son said, Dad, are you kidding? IAS is for lazy, corrupt time servers. And what a terrible thing to say for the son of a very high official. We all know that's not true. But we can't public services. And part of the problem, there are such good people that over the years that I have met in these services, but the other side of it, of course, also is that a few people spoil it for the good, and actually the systems finally are the ones that defeat a lot of good people. So our real battle in corruption, it's a twofold issue. One is the issue of dharma, of ethics, and second is the issue of institutions, of governance. And frankly, take the institution of seniority. Now, seniority is almost universal rule in public services. But you know, what this young man was telling his father was that, look, why should I join the IAS? Because no matter whether I work hard and I do a great job or I do nothing, on a certain day I'll get promoted. And he says, what's the pleasure of that, from that? And so it's institutions like these that we should question also. And that young man was talking about how if you went into the private sector, how you could make a difference, you could get rewarded for really doing great work, and you could also get punished. You could quit, you could be thrown out of your job if you did not do, if you did not, were not doing the right thing. Anyway, I was called a guru, management guru, by the fine young man who just introduced me. And I'll quickly tell you, management guru, my sense of such a person is one who's good at understanding, GU, but relatively useless, RU, GURU. Of course, the word guru is also in my name, so this presents a problem. But it wasn't always so. Until the age of 3, believe it or not, my name was Ashok Kumar. But my grandmother, that is my father's mother, suspected that my mother had given me that name because she thought her daughter-in-law was in love with the Bollywood actor named Ashok Kumar. So this wasn't right in her view. So she took me to her guru, placed me at his feet, and the guru looked down at me and he smiled, and I looked up at him and I smiled. And then he says, well, you've placed him there, so we'll call him Gurcharan Das. So overnight, I was transformed from the Prince of Happiness, Ashok Kumar, to the humble servant of the feet of the Guru. But many years later, I asked the Guru, why did he give me that name? And he said, well, I think every young man needs to learn humility. And he told me that his idea of humility is to take your work seriously, but not yourself seriously. Take your work seriously, but not yourself seriously. Because yourself intervenes and creates all the problems at work. Now, over the years, I've worked, as he told you, I worked both in the private sector as well as I've been a writer, and I've met leaders in both spheres, leaders in business, leaders in the government, senior people, politics, civil servants, and I felt they had three attributes in common, the good ones. The first attribute, the first quality they had was not intelligence, determination, just sheer. If they believed in something, they were going to go and strive and get it. The second quality was humility. I already defined humility for you from what my grandmother's guru told me. The third quality is integrity. And that's what we are here to discuss today. Now, integrity is not something that you teach somebody, or that you, if a person speaks too much about his integrity, you begin to worry about that person. You see it in action. And again, I saw in my life people of integrity in action. In the way they spoke, one of the ways, one of my bosses that I had, he had the uncanny ability to speak to everyone in the same voice, meaning whether it was the lowest person in the company or the CEO of the company, his voice, his manner, his attitude was exactly the same. Now that is a form of integrity. And the word, a word that I prefer to use because we are in India, is actually dharma. Dharma is not religion. Dharma is a frustrating word, by the way. In Sanskrit, everything, it's so confusing. You know, like they say, the dharma of fire is to burn. And but I mean, it can mean law, it can mean duty, it can mean religion. Religion is a recent use of the word. But think of it as trying to do the right thing. That is, I think, the best definition of dharma. And I personally think that, you know, many nations have a code word. A code word is like a key. It unlocks the secrets of the country. And the code word for America is liberty. And Americans do a lot of good things, but a lot of crazy things also, like carry guns on the street in the name of liberty. The code word for the French is égalité, equality. They too will do a lot of good things, but crazy things like the 35-hour week, when you were penalized in the early days of the 35 hours for working more than 35 hours, you know, at your job. And so India's code word, I believe, is dharma. Now, the English-speaking elite probably doesn't know this, but every woman in every village, every woman, every man, every child understands dharma. Dharma, as I said, is a difficult word, but think of it as doing the right thing. Now, what is the right thing, of course, is the problem, especially in our country where it's not a country with 10 commandments, you know, as Christian countries, for example, are. And so a lot of the times we have to figure out what is right. And in a way, actually, that is good, because it is not a matter of black and white very often. And that's what we'll talk about in a few minutes. That trying to figure out, because we are an argumentative Indian, we always like to get into a discussion. And very often the discussions are about what was right and what was wrong in a particular situation. And this is why I like the Mahabharata, because it is filled with these moral dilemmas. You know, there's a famous one about Kaushik, Rishi Kaushik, who was very proud because he never spoke a lie. And so he's sitting in the town square, and a man runs past him And then there are these crooks who are running behind him, trying to catch him and kill him. And why? Because he has seen that man who's running has been witness to a crime that these gangsters have committed. So the gangsters ask the Rishi Kaushik, "Arey, wo kahan gaya? Where did he go?" And Kaushik, of course, has never told a lie. So he says, "Wo wahan gaya." And of course, they catch him and they kill him. So Kaushik lands up in hell afterwards. And he says, "But I've been such a good man. I've never spoken a lie. Why am I in hell?" And then they tell him that your job that day was to save that man's life. That was dharma, not to speak the truth. So you see, there is always a conflict of our values, whether to tell the truth, whether satya or whether ahimsa. And in this case, ahimsa was the right answer. And it's we every day in our lives we face this. You know, somebody invites us for dinner, and we don't want to go because we don't like the persons who are going to be there over dinner. And so she calls you and she says, "Acha, come for dinner." And in your politest way, you say that, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I have already accepted another engagement." Of course, there's no other engagement. You just don't want to tell the person that, "I'm sorry, but you're a bore, all your friends are bores, and why do I want to spend my Saturday night with bores?" Now that would be the honest answer. So again, honesty is not the best policy. That is to say that in fact civilization is based on telling white lies. Now this is not this is a vigilance week, so please don't take this as suggesting that I'm asking you to become liars. But the reality is that life is grey. Life is grey, dharma is grey, the world is grey. And therefore, because the world is grey, actually 10 commandments is often not very helpful. What is more helpful is to understand, to reason out for ourselves what this is. When it comes to public policy, since you have given the title of this talk, the difficulty of being good in public policy. So we go to the area of public, and we go to the pub, and there we have the guiding principle is Raj Dharma. And there again, what is Raj Dharma? Simply what benefits the maximum number of people is Raj Dharma. So if you are choosing between two policies as a policy maker, your decision would be guided by what is called utilitarianism, which is the maximum good of the maximum number of people. And this is why in the Mahabharata, Vidura tells, do you remember Vidur Niti in the Mahabharata? Vidura says to Dhritarashtra that, he's illustrating Raj Dharma, and he says, I would sacrifice one person to save a village. I would sacrifice a village to save the nation. And that is his example of it. Now, many times we wouldn't agree with that, but by and large, we judge public dharma in this manner. And frankly, Raj Dharma is something our founding fathers were truly committed. so committed that they placed the wheel of Dharma, the Dharma Chakra, in the middle of the flag of our country to remind us every day about the importance of doing the right thing. And the Constitution, I don't know how many of you have heard the name P.V. Kane. P.V. Kane is today hardly known by anyone, but he was one of the greatest Indians who ever lived. In fact, Radhakrishnan presented him with Bharat Ratna. Now here is a Bharat Ratna being conferred of somebody who nobody seems to know, but he wrote. He was a judge of the Bombay High Court, but he was also a Sanskrit scholar, and he wrote a 5-volume work called The History of the Dharma Shastras. Anyway, he called the Constitution a Dharma Shastra, meaning the Constitution is not just a set of laws, it is also habits of the heart. It is also a moral document. And behind most lawyers are not aware of this because they are only concerned with the law. But fundamentally, the Constitution is concerned with right and wrong conduct. And I personally feel that we have not sold the Constitution to the people. One of the difficulties today in implementing the rule of law in the country is because of this. You know, the ordinary person in India thinks that one fine day the Constitution fell from the sky and there it is. Well, a Constitution has to be sold. Americans sell their Constitution every day. You go to school. I went to high school in America for a few years, and in high school, in the assembly, you pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, and actually that allegiance teaches you that the Constitution of the country is to inculcate the habits of the heart, which is what I call it. So in India, this is an unfinished project. It's a pity, I think, that Mahatma Gandhi died just soon after independence, and he could have sold it as a Dharma constitution, as a Dharma document. The people who came afterwards, all well-meaning people. Mr. Nehru was part of the English-speaking elite, much more, and he gave many, many speeches, but his words did not resonate with the people the way Gandhi's did during the freedom struggle, you know. And when Gandhi talked about right and wrong, he really used to use the word dharma, not in the sense of swadharma or caste dharma, but as sadharan dharma, as universal, sanatan dharma, as a universal dharma, which is applicable to all. So anyway, that's getting us a little off the subject. So the big conflict in our life and in moral philosophy really is what is exactly, how do you judge a deed of dharma? And let me tell you that a little story. And it's a true thing. You probably, those who have studied philosophy or psychology, would have come across the name of Piaget, Jean Piaget. He was a French psychologist, and he did an experiment one day. He took a birthday cake to a birthday party of 10 children, and in front of the children he made very carefully equal pieces for everyone. But in one case he made the piece double the size, and he gave that piece to one of the children randomly, not the birthday boy, but randomly gave it to them. And that boy who got the biggest piece started to cry. And the other children knew something had gone wrong that day. And they were upset because he was not fair. Everybody said, that's not fair. Now a 3-year-old, what he was trying to prove is that a 3-year-old acquires the sense of dharma. A 3-year-old. So it is quite intuitive. The notion of fairness is intuitive. It's not something that you have to go to school to learn. And people have speculated, evolutionary scientists have tried to speculate, where did this notion of dharma, fairness, right and wrong, come from? And they're not still sure that they have an answer. They feel it could be related to the species, the human species, survival of the species. But of course in animals and birds also you find it, that if a dolphin, a dolphin in the sea, if a dolphin is hurt, all the other dolphins will try to help and keep that dolphin afloat for hours together. And sometimes some birds have they will, if they see a predator in the sky, an eagle or a kite who will come and grab the young of that species, they will start screaming at the risk of making themselves targets of the predator. So it's not just the human species, it's many, many species who get it. Anyway, coming back to the question of how do we judge a deed, and this is a question, of course, in the Mahabharata, that when Draupadi asks Yudhishthira, they are in the forest already, banished from the kingdom for 13 years. This is the Pandavas. And she tells Yudhishthira, look, we are still popular, let's collect an army and go and win back our kingdom, because it was wrongfully taken from us in a rigged game of dice. This is the first time in the Mahabharata the author uses the word rigged game of dice. And Yudhishthira's answer is, well, I've given my word, so I can't go back. I've said we'll go into exile. She gets very frustrated. What kind of a husband have I got? Doesn't understand that it was stolen from us, and now he's talking about fairness and all. And so they in the Dvaita forest, they are confused. And it sort of, next day Vidura comes to visit them, they ask him. Anyway, everybody is saying what is dharma, etc., what is the right thing, as usual, argumentative Indian. When I was writing this on this chapter in my book, Difficulty of Being Good, a newspaper report appeared in the Times of India. It talked about a child who was drowning on a beach, Candolim Beach in Goa. And a young man jumped in and saved the child. And so it was a story about a hero. And the reporter from the Times of India had gone to this boy and she asked him, "Why did you do it? You're a hero. Why did you do it?" And the young man very sheepishly says, "Well, you know, we are a college party that has come on holiday, and I was trying to impress a girl in our party, and she says, 'But then you're not a hero.'" But my reaction was, the child was saved. The dharmic deed was done. So why are you worried whether he was trying to impress his girlfriend, but he saved the child? So you see, this is a problem, because in the Mahabharata it comes up also, a bit like Kaushik's dilemma, that how do you judge a public act, an act in a public space? It is on the basis of consequences rather than intentions. The guy may have been a crook, but if he does so much good, you have to acknowledge that he's a bit of a hero, you know. It's a little bit like today, Lalit Modi. Now here, you know, Lalit Modi, the founder of IPL cricket, which has become such a big phenomena in our country. And poor Lalit Modi is sitting out, he's in exile in London, running away from the law. Well, this guy was an amazing guy. I mean, I happen to know him. And I won't tell you other stories about him, but in this case, the reality is that everybody objected. When Lalit said, let's create this IPL, everybody in BCCI was opposed to it. And he tried to bribe people, he tried to tell them, look, this is a damn good idea, it'll be good for country, and let's do it. Finally, I think Sharad Pawar or somebody seemed to put his weight behind it, and it happened. And of course, you know the story today, that a billion Indians today, for them, for weeks and weeks, this is a source of such joy to the people. Then it has created India, it's made India, which was a very indifferent cricketing side, to world's #1 cricketing power. And then it has made the BCCI very rich, plus the income tax department has got a lot of, I don't know how much, but last I heard, it was in thousands of crores in taxes that they get out of IPL. So the taxpayer is happy, the tax department is happy, madam. And finally the teams have become very successful. People who are investors are also gained. So everybody has won, but Lalit Modi, if he comes to India, he'll go to jail. Now, so how do we judge? I mean, the guy, actually what he did was that when he sold TV rights, at that time I think it wasn't Sony, it was Star. That was Star or something else. He made money under the table. He made a lot of money under the table. And some people say 80 crores, some other figures or whatever. But the reality is that he did wrong. And so he rightly should be punished for the wrongdoing. But when we think of him as a public figure and looking at the legacy, how we judge here, that he's a bit of a hero also. In a way, actually, that Dhirubhai Ambani, who broke every law in the book, but he created an equity cult on the Bombay Stock Exchange single-handedly. Nobody had done the middle class so much good in the 1980s that people actually believed that by putting money in the stock market, the middle class suddenly came into the stock market thanks to him. So these are some of the difficult things that we find when we talked about the difficulty of being good. I'll tell you a personal story. I joined the company at a young age. I was the first brand manager of a product called Vicks Vapor Rub. Most of you know Vicks Vapor Rub. And in fact, we made it so successful in India that people think it's an Indian product. Actually, it's an international product sold in 135 countries of the world. And anyway, I was at that time at the top of the company, and there was a flu in India. And we had to work our factories 3 shifts to meet the needs of the market. Children caught colds, mothers applied Vicks Vapor Rub, and we ended up that year selling a record amount of Vicks Vapor Rub in the eyes of our headquarters. In New York, we were like heroes. But one day, the company secretary brought me a summons. It said that you have broken the law. We had actually, that was the time of the license Raj. And as a part of the license Raj, a company was given a particular amount that they could sell. In our case, it was so many tons of Vicks Vapor Rub in 1 year. Now, because of the flu, we had overshot that number. But even I did not know that if you produced beyond your licensed capacity, you were liable to go to jail. There was it was a cognizable offense. And I think 3 years was the maximum penalty, but there was some discretion the department had on it, and I think the MRTP was the department that actually implemented the MRTP Act, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Anyway, I was summoned to Delhi, and I had these 2 lawyers who were shivering as we walked into the office of a joint secretary. And he was very rude. First he kept us waiting a long time, and then he wanted to know what was the issue, and I explained that, look, there was a flu and we did this in all good faith, and frankly we felt we had produced for the country. And he said no. He was one of the old school, by the way, who did not like the private sector at all, and worse, multinationals. They were in his book, East India Company. And so I was in his eyes really a bit of a dodgy character. And there was absolutely no sympathy in his eyes. And so he finally listened to me and he said, fine, now the law will take its own course. And frankly, he said, to you types of you guys, you crook, he didn't say crooks, but basically he says, we want to make an example of you. And so the lawyers were shivering, and I was depressed at the prospect of going to jail. And I don't know what got into my head or where I got the guts to, as we were walking out, he threw us out of his office, jao, jao. And as we were getting to the door and we were going out of the door, I turned round to face him. And I said, sir, what if the world finds out? What if a report appears in the New York Times? We are an American multinational company. And if the report, what the reports will say will be, here's a company that produced during a flu epidemic for the benefits of its people, and this crazy government has sent its manager to jail. I said, how will our country look? And how will our Prime Minister look in the eyes of other leaders? And I said, frankly, how will you look? So he said, are you threatening me? I said, no. I said, we are an international company and the news will get out. And this is a pretty bizarre thing to produce for your country and to be jailed. And he just said, threw us out. And by this time the lawyers were saying to me, why did you speak up? You know, this at least he could have pardoned you, but now you put his back up. Anyway, I must have had some impact because they dropped the inquiry. We never heard of it. But I must tell you that I had many sleepless weeks after this. But now here's an example of another story. I was telling Madam that I am an old-time storyteller who sits in a village, under the village bird tree, and this is how the Mahabharata was told in the old days. Anyway, here's a story, and the law will take its course, is one way to look at it. Yes, the company had broken the law, but don't you think it was a bad law? I mean, this is what made the license Raj so idiotic. I don't know many stories like this one, but I know Bajaj, Rahul Bajaj was hauled up because, you know, Bajaj scooters used to have a long waiting list, 5 years, 10 years to get a scooter in those days. And he was hauled up also. Of course, he got up there, he was a thundering chap. And so he got up there and said, my father supported the freedom movement. He financed Gandhi's at the time. And if he could go to jail, I'll be ready to go to jail, something like that. Anyway, I think they dropped the inquiry in his case also. But the point here is the law was bad. And so is it right to break bad laws? This is the question. This is the question. So it's not easy. The subject of dharma is not an easy one. In the license Raj, I think Usha told me that smugglers of the 1980s became importers of gold in the 1990s. All you did was change the name. The smuggler became an importer. And the country gained so much. Instead of wasting the time of the customs to try and find smugglers of gold, the simple thing was to legalize the import of gold. And the country gained a lot, and the people benefited from what they wanted. So, most of us today find it very hard to defend the license Raj. I mean, poor Mr. Nehru, I think he, with all his good intentions, he wanted to create a socialist, egalitarian India, but he asked the bureaucracy what to do, and they gave him license Raj. Of course, he's not blameless, because he should have known better as well. So it's not, although I must say in his time, in the 1950s, we are not in a blame game. How am I doing for time? Okay, we've got another 12 minutes. In the 1950s and 60s, we were all socialists. I was a socialist. Every young person was a socialist. And we were mesmerized by the success of the Soviet Union, no question about it. But by the 1970s, the world had understood the weaknesses of the Soviet system. They had also seen the rise of Japan and Korea and Taiwan. These countries had become serious economic success stories based on the success of the exports of low technology, labor intensive products. And that's the time that, I mean, this was told to Mr. Shastri before he died. And Shastri, he was inclined to agree. Unfortunately, he died. Indira Gandhi came to power, and she made the license Raj even worse. So if you want to blame somebody, it's not Nehru so much, because that was the wisdom of his time. But by the 70s, we should have changed. Instead of 1991, imagine if we had saved those 20 years, where we would be today and where China is today. Anyway, so the question then is that, you know, a few months ago I was at a party and people were talking about usual party talk. Somebody said, well, Indians are just corrupt. Some story had come out in the paper that day, and people were discussing, and he said, and I said, wrong. When you say Indians are corrupt, you're making a cultural statement. You're making a statement that, and culture takes hundreds of years to build. And so I said, you know, the same person who you call corrupt in India takes a flight to London, gets off at Heathrow Airport in 8 hours, crosses the immigration line, and after that, he will stop at the red light, he will not spit on the street, he will pay his taxes, and he will not be corrupt. So how do you explain that? How can culture change in 8 hours? So there's something else. So to make a cultural statement is plain wrong. It's like saying every German is a Nazi, Frenchmen are lovers, great lovers, or whatever other national trait you want to talk about, national or Pakistanis are terrorists. This kind of talk, very wrong, very wrong. And so, what then? Why was the same person not stopping at the red light here? And why is that person stopping at the red light in London? And the answer is governance. Governance, first of all, the rules and the implementation of rules. We have the rules, but implementation is weak. I live near Lodi Road, and once we have a pedestrian crossing there in front of Johor Bagh to Lodi Gardens, and people, it's a pedestrian crossing, so people would go through the light even when, and so the residents of Johor Bagh got somebody they knew in the police department, and they put a policeman there at the red light. And that fellow started fining people, stopping fining. In 3 days, culture changed. After 1 week, they removed the policeman, and everybody, this is 10 years later, everybody still stops at that red light. So it is a question of institutions. It is a question of institutions as much or even more than individual dharma. And so what really then does this mean? This means, frankly, this Vigilance Awareness Week, not only should we emphasize the individual dharma, that when you give a cake, you cut it evenly for all the children equally, but it also means that to bring awareness to the political class to do governance reforms. What are these reforms? Very simply, in all spheres of, all pillars of the state. Judiciary. Why should it take 10 years to get justice in the courts? The same thing in some other country will take 2 years. Here it takes 10 years. Second, let's take the police. Why should the police be at the beck and call of the chief minister or the ruling party? The head of police in India, I mean in each state, the head of the police is regarded like a sort of an extension of the political party. And the small things, posting of a constable, the politicians get involved. And this brings down the morale of the police force, of the officers in the police. Take the parliament, another pillar of democracy. The Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, year after year tell us that the number of people with criminal records who are elected is now 1/3 in parliament as well as in the state assemblies. 1 out of 3 has a criminal record, and 1 out of 5 actually has got a serious crime record like murder, rape against them. So the best thing, if you are a criminal, is to run for election. Then you are protected. You don't have to, you can, your delay, a court case can be delayed forever. That's the third pillar. Fourth pillar, bureaucracy. Well, I just gave you an example. Example of seniority. That how can you have an institution where the best officers and the mediocre officers are not are exactly in the same place? So what is the incentive for good people? I mean, the best people in the country still get into the IAS, but their backs are broken after 8 or 10 years of this. And so these are nothing, these are the institutional reforms that we need to do. And I would hope that we should use the Vigilance Week to bring to attention these problems. This will do more. If you can catch crooks through the court process, they don't, criminal can get away, 10 years, 15 years, get your thing delayed, go to become a politician, win an election, you won't go to jail. So, and there have been in all cases, whether it's the administrative reforms commissions, police reforms, judicial reforms, there are umpteen committees that have given the same recommendations for the last 40 years, but it hasn't happened. So we talk about economic reforms every day in the newspapers, economic reforms, but we forget that it's really governance reforms. Governance reforms will change the lives of the people working for the government in the public sector. That is the thing. And it's not new. I mean, England, who gave us the civil service, our civil services, they've gone and reformed their institutions. In many countries, when you reach a level like joint secretary, you resign, and then you are rehired in competition with people from all walks of life. This is true. I mean, we are playing, Pakistan's playing New Zealand today. New Zealand is an example where this happens. It's got a first-rate civil service, New Zealand. So, I once met Mr. Modi, and he had called people who were writing on the economy, and he, in his early time, I think 2015, soon after he got elected, and he asked us, well, tell me what I should be doing. So others gave, there was Nainan, there was Swaminathan Iyer, and all these people, they were all giving suggestions to him. And I said, governance reform. I said, we forget the greatest economic reformer, Margaret Thatcher, is more famous for transforming the civil service of England, of Britain, than she is for economic reform. So, and she used to say that I spend 20% of my time doing the reforms and 80% selling the reforms. That, of course, is also something that we need to do. Now, how am I? I think I've run out of my time. So let me quickly. I won't go tell the whole story of Mr. Modi. We'll do it another day. The point here is, last few words, regulation is the job of government. And the best regulation is light and by exception, and it's people friendly. In other words, that to catch 5 crooks in the society, you should not harass 95% innocent people. Fundamental rule. And this is frankly why I love faceless assessments of the income tax, direct taxes. It has really changed. It has really changed the, you must have all experienced it, lives of people. You know, you don't need every year to worry. It's like in the old days, you know, when we was to travel, and when we reached the airport, when we arrived back in Palam Airport in Delhi, everybody would be scared because they opened every suitcase and it was humiliating. Kuch bhi nahi hota, fir bhi ye kya hai, wo kya hai. That is harassing 99 people to catch one person. Now that's gone away, you know. Similarly, in income tax, that has gone away. Now, in customs, I believe you're also working towards this kind of assessment where you don't have to open every container. And I hope GST will one day get in that mode where we do it. Now, that is good regulation. And finally, let me just end with my favorite story of Dharma, and it is about Yudhishthir. And Yudhishthir, at the end of his life, many of you know it, so excuse me if I'm repeating it. But at the end of his life, he's been a good king. This is much after the war is over. And he's invited to heaven as a reward of being a good king. And on the way to heaven, you may remember that a dog attaches itself to him, a street dog, dirty stray dog. And so Yudhishthir is walking, looking straight ahead. The dog is walking, looking straight ahead. And they're walking up to heaven. And they reach the gate of heaven. And then at heaven, the heaven keeper comes out, the god Indra. And he says, "Welcome, great king." And Yudhishthir does something very strange. A normal person would just go, walk into heaven. He says, "But what about this dog?" And Indra says, "This is heaven, no dogs allowed." And then Indra tries to persuade him, "Ki bhai, he's not even your dog. He's a street dog, stray dog. He just attached himself to you and came here. He wants a free ride." And Yudhishthir says, he doesn't say this to Indra, but he thinks that what kind of a place is this heaven, where the great god Indra, even he doesn't know what is right, what is dharma. Dharma is to help somebody. This poor dog is out not on the road in Delhi, he's up in heaven. And who's there to help him out there? Anyway, you know the rest of the story, of course. This was a test of Yudhishthir, and the dog is transformed into the god Dharma. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking talk on such an important topic. I am sure we all will try to apply some of the principles and such virtues in our public as well as private life. Your suggestions on Raj Dharma, utilitarian principle of greatest good of greatest number of people, notion of fairness, and role of institutions to shape the ethical behavior and the role of regulations are a food for thought for all of us. Many of you must have read the book, The Difficulty of Being Good, and now have heard the writer himself. Therefore, it is an opportune moment to raise your queries and get answers from the sir himself. We have mics floating with the audience. If some of you have any questions, they may be asked. While in the meanwhile, we have got some questions from our online audience also, which I may put while the audience here is ready with the questions. So the first question we have had is that not everyone is immoral and many are good men and women too, but the biggest problem lies in good people being silent. Edmund Burke has also said, the only thing required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. How can everyone be motivated to speak against the evil and wrongdoing? It is also in the Indian culture to be modest, and therefore many people do not speak anything against the wrong. Some call it the culture of silence. What are your suggestions to rectify this scenario?
Yeah, well, this is a very good, very good question. And really, in the Mahabharata, I don't know whether you remember, but when Draupadi was being disrobed, and finally she protected herself through dharma, she raised this question to everybody. These are all kings sitting in the assembly like you are sitting here just now. And she asks this question, why were you silent when I was being disrobed? And I think Vidura gets up, Vidura gets up and says, speak up, because he says that the law of dharma is that 1/4 of the punishment, half the punishment goes to the guilty person, and 1/4 of the punishment goes, so actually it was Dushasan who was pulling her sari, and 1/4 punishment goes to those who instigated that. So that was Duryodhan, 1/4 punishment. And 1/4 goes to those who were silent. So he says, all of you are going to pay for this. So you're absolutely right, the person who's asking the question. So the answer is, I think we have to make the idea of the whistleblower a lot. There is a whistleblower law. I don't know what happened to it. Did it finally go through? Did it become a law?
Yes, sir, it is in that.
Yeah. There should be some protection for the whistleblower, but actually we should have should make the whistleblower a hero. One of the heroes of the Vigilance Week should be whistleblowers. They should be awarded, rewarded, commended. They are sort of heroes of the country. So I think that is the case for new heroes. And we should find a better word than whistleblower. That's not a nice word.
Sir, he has also asked about the culture of silence in India.
Same thing. Silence. We should not be. Silence is wrong. When you see something wrong, it's right to point it out.
Right. Thank you, sir. Now we also have a question from Shri.
You know those children who got a cake? They were not silent. They were all very angry when they saw injustice being done.
Right, sir. Sir, we have a question from Shri Periyuma Sankar, ADG Chennai. The challenge before administration is not only to pronounce just organizational goals, but to make them as goal for each and every member of the organization. What steps are desired to face this challenge, sir?
Well, yes, I mean, goals should go run down, and it should be bottom up. Individual goals should all add up to the goal of the leader of the organization. So it just makes sense. I think it's common sense that we should work in a collaborative mode, and it should be from bottom up rather than top down.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Any questions from the audience here?
Hi, sir. Good evening. Very nice talk. Really loved enjoying it. My name is Ashutosh, and I'm a fourth-year undergrad student over here at IIT Delhi. I totally enjoyed the conversation, and I can totally relate to your career. You know, being first of all in corporate, next up, going somewhere, exploring your passion of being a writer, and then also participating in conversations which are beyond one's own personal life and rather contributing to nation building. So I'm totally very, very grateful to you to actually being here and to the organization for conducting it. My question to you is that, given the fact that you're coming from a supply chain background, leading one of the biggest FMCG firms of the country, so you're very much related to, you know, economy of scale, scaling up things, even if they're of very minuscule prices, but making them reach every nook and corner of the country. So I think this is what we require at the governance level as well, as you rightly said, that not just this has to be done from top down, but also bottom up, that, like you just mentioned, that bottom up level of, like, bottom up growth of ideas and goals should be transformed. So my question to you is that how do we penetrate, like create this penetration through the agent of education into like our current ecosystem? Because, you know, right from the growth of an individual, he stopped from not only his school, but also his home, that, you know, this is the rules, set of rules to follow, this is a set of rules not to follow. But the sense of dharma is added with a lot of biases even at that point of time. And then once you get to school, this gets even magnified further. You are, even when you talk about going for coachings and, you know, coming to IITs, big institutions like these, you're definitely told not to explore thinking in that way, because that is not the right way you will fetch marks. So it's very, very objective oriented. And I think somehow this also relates to how corruption also comes in, that, you know, this is not how you will be able to get easy money, or this is not how you get money, let's just not do it, even if that's the right thing. So how do you think, can we solve this at the bottom level, again, from a supply chain perspective? Because I think that's very appealing to the younger generation, as we can see it relate to how it relates to work as well.
Right. Well, this is a very, very good question. And there's no easy answer. I wish I could give you a good governance answer, but it's not like stopping, getting a cop at the red light and, you know, fining people. I think this is a question where we all, I mean, this is parents and teachers. You're talking about how we take away the child's basic desire to we actually, you know, the source of invention and the source of discovery, and you ask all the geniuses in the world, they had the same answer. It came from keeping a small element of child in them. And so that keeping that child in them meant that somewhere along the line they were not punished for keeping that questioning child. It's like, you know how a child is, it's raining outside, and all the adults, they put on raincoats, carry an umbrella, there's a puddle in the street, they all go around the puddle. What does the child do? He goes right and jumps into the puddle. And the mother screams. She has to wash the poor clothes. I mean, the clothes of the child. And so that's the secret really lies. And really, I think that this is how one. Now, of course, we are a country which has been poor, and now we are at a stage where we are growing, and opportunities are growing, and we've gone from $100 per capita income to about 2,200 today. If we keep growing at 7%, which we have for the last 30 years, for the next 25 years, by the time we reach 100 in 2047, our per capita income will be about 10,500. That time, most of the people of the country will be economically at ease. And so we'll be able to take. Right now, the middle class, frankly, is risk averse. You know, my mother, one lesson she used to always say, she used to say, remember you have to make a living. So better work hard in school. Now, I think you've all heard this. Better take useful subjects, and you know, all these things are part of the middle class experience. It's middle class insecurity. Middle class insecurity makes people behave, parents behave in a certain way. So you don't experiment. You don't let a child do what they really love to do. And I think to some extent this insecurity is already going away, because you can see how youngsters are, the startup culture has got going. I mean, we should be very proud of this startup culture in the country. It's the startups that actually create the long-term jobs in any society. So let's hope it happens here. But I would just say it's the duty of parents and teachers to let the child, as much of that child, to stay as long as possible. So if he does jump in the puddle, heavens are not going to fall. And that's really the only thing. Thomas Edison said that I made mistakes every day. He's the one who invented electricity. I took one mistake to another mistake to another mistake to success. So we have to allow mistakes in society, mistakes in our culture, mistakes in our companies. Only then will a culture, the kind you're talking about, will flourish. Thank you.
Thank you,
Understood,
sir.
sir. Thank you so much. I hope for the next book that you have, maybe there's something more to educating the children the right way, maybe incorporating more of this into the NAP or things like that. Thank you.
Mic here.
To add to what this young man has said, I also went through the IIT system, and then I did my master's in management here. And one thing that I find missing in all the universities and professional colleges is any awareness of the tax laws. Either that person will be paying taxes or will be administering the payment of taxes, and the other laws that may be there. So I think that is one idea that I can add to what he's saying. I'd like to have your views on this.
Yeah, and I think to add to your point, that one is literacy of that kind, but the other is that the best tax laws, and both these ladies, distinguished ladies on my right and left, will testify that the best laws are the simplest ones. That when I said the regulation should be friendly to the people, that it should not need a tax accountant to tell you what it is. There are examples in countries where the tax form is only one page, and it has very simple requirement of information. So this is as much a duty of the tax department as it is to collect tax. That it's in many countries that the idea of a tax, U.S. included, where the says, oh, the tax, they want to scrutinize your tax return. It sends shivers, and that shouldn't happen.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions,
Yeah.
please?
Hello. Good afternoon, Gurcharan. I address you by first name, having worked at Procter & Gamble, 1990-91. If you remember the Vicks Vapor Syrup sachet pack, introduction in a short period. So great to listen to you and see you comment on values. And my question is, in an educational institution like ours, what message should we derive from your kind of appreciation of Lalit Modi and of Dhirubhai Ambani in building big empires, and at the same time not having had use the best means, and also the illustrations that you take from the Mahabharata, where the Lord Krishna himself did not always use the most honest means to success. So I'm left a little perplexed, and what is the message do we give to our students in terms of the path that they need to pick up when they are to deliver value to society? Thank you.
Correct. Well, it would be the easiest thing in the world for me to say, be good, do right. But if I did that with a distinguished audience like this, with students of IIT, they would fall asleep in 5 minutes. My job, my purpose has been to provoke thought. Like that incident in Goa of that boy, the child who was drowning. How do you judge that act? And so I think that as we think about these issues, obviously in all cultures, the values of satya, ahimsa, these are fundamental values. And they all accept these values. However, by just proclaiming that, I'm not sure it has made people any more righteous or dharmic. My hope is that actually by talking openly about problems that we all face, day-to-day problems we all face, and we see these conflicts of values, that we try and understand and build a more compassionate society, a more upright society. I feel that especially an IIT, an institution of higher learning, where people are encouraged to question, we should question. And by questioning, I feel, we'll come to a better conviction, ultimately to believe why the importance of satya, ahimsa and all these, or fairness is there. So, I think when these fine people from the from the CBIC invited me, I didn't think they were expecting a how-to. My books are not how-to, and this lecture is not how-to. It's just to provoke in us and mind us at least once a year some of these issues that relate to Dharma. I hope that's some kind of answer.
Mic here, to the front row.
I'm afraid I've cut into your time.
Thank you, sir, very much for your brilliant session. My question is a bit theoretical. I would like to understand what is the thin line which differentiates honesty from integrity. So in the example you gave of Rishi Kaushik, he was not honest. I mean, he was honest, but he didn't have integrity. Is that as simple as that? I was just trying to, understand the difference.
Well, this is where you see that the Dharma is such a frustrating thing. Even the Mahabharata at the end says, it's frustrated because people, it says, know what is right. But why don't they do it then? And so, in some cases, Satya may have been the answer. Truthfulness may be a better answer than ahimsa. It's possible. So, all it is that, first of all, human beings are not perfect, and neither are our institutions perfect. All we can say is we should try and improve them. And so I don't think it's a matter of choosing integrity over honesty. Honesty is part of integrity. It's absolutely a person who has a certain sense of honesty. Everybody admires that person. That includes intellectual honesty.
Now, can we have just the last one or two questions, if you permit, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, we have got a online question also. One question from the audience itself, who wants to be anonymous. What, according to you, would be the top 2 governance changes that you would like to see, sir?
Well, I mentioned 4 examples of governance that we need. One is to solve the problem of judicial delay. And I would say, I would put this on the top. Nothing lets a crook get away than knowing that it will take years and years in the court for the situation to be rectified. And second, I would say find a way whereby a person working in the civil service, whether it's IRS or IAS, whichever, a way to differentiate between the truly outstanding people and good people versus the bad people. To treat everybody alike. This idea of seniority, I think, is an insidious idea. We think it's democratic in some ways, but it is really not. You don't build an outstanding organization that way. And so these would be my top 2.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Now, we have some more questions, but sir, we don't have time for that. However, I would like to ask a question from my side. Sir, we all know about Karna in the Mahabharata. And I've read the Mahabharata, so this question quite perplexed me. So he always knew about the misdeeds of Duryodhana, that he was with him. But he maintained his loyalty to Duryodhana. And probably because he was indebted with the obligations he had taken from Duryodhana. Now in our life also, we take so many obligations from maybe the corporate or other people. So in this context, how can we judge the attitude or the ethical action or unethical action, whichever it is, of the Karna, sir? That despite knowing that he was with the wrong person, he maintained his loyalty with that person.
I think in the end, actually, I have a slightly different take on what motivates karna. And by the way, you know, there is a Muslim tribe in Gujarat. They go from village to village and they sing the Mahabharat, but it's called the Song of Karna. For them, the hero of the Mahabharat is not Arjuna, but it is Karna. So now, Karan is a complex chap, and there are many theories about him, that he was rejected by Draupadi and all that, many. By the way, there are many variants to the Mahabharata also. And some years ago, and Mahabharata evolved over 500 years, by the way. It kept changing. In the beginning, it was Jaya, which was only 8,000 verses. In Jaya, Krishna is not Lord Krishna. He is a friend of the Pandavas. He's ruler of a small state. Like then the second version of Mahabharata is 200 years later. It's called Bharata. In Bharata, he has become a Kul Devta, Vasudeva. He is a Kul Deva. But another 200 years later, when the final Mahabharata is written, so Jaya is 8,000 verses, Bharata is 20,000 verses, Mahabharata is 100,000 verses. So it's become like an encyclopedia. And there Krishna has become not only God with a small g, but God with a capital G. And the influence of the Vaishnavas is on it. So you have to see the Mahabharata historically as an evolving thing. Now, your question, just quickly remind me again, is
how can we judge the actions of Karna?
Karna. Okay, so Karna also is evolved, and frankly, I think people think he's loyal to, he's putting loyalty above principle. And it's the other way around, in my view, that it is not Duryodhan that he is attached to as much as, I'll give you the story. You know, Krishna goes to, when he realizes, when Lord Krishna realizes now there'll be a war, and with Karna on the other side, it will be very tough for the Pandavas to win the war. So he goes to try and turn Karna, and he tells him, look, you are the eldest. You're the eldest, these are your brothers, and your mother, Kunti, is the same mother to you. So you come, and if you come with us, then with you and Arjuna, we'll defeat the world. Right?
Yes.
And Karna refuses. Karna refuses, and he says, and I think this is the best answer. In fact, you should put it on the gates of IIT. He says that your mother is not the one who gives birth to you, but the one who brings you up. Meaning that he's talking about his parents who brought him up, not Kunti, but the charioteer, the wife of the charioteer, Radha, and I think the father, I forget the name. Anyway, that's right. So your mother is the one who brings you up, and not the one who gives birth to you. Now that principle is the principle that then makes the caste system illegal, that it is, you are judged not by your birth, but by your actions, and so what he's fighting is that the principle of births is not the principle of hierarchy. that it's not king. You know what Krishna had said, look, if we win the war, you will be the Maharaja. And Yudhishthira will stand on one side, Arjun will stand up on the other side, and they will fan you as you sit on the throne. That's what he held up as the prize. And that's what he is saying, that Kunti is not my mother. So it's a principle he's talking about.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. I'm sure that we all wish to have a longer discussion, but due to paucity of time, we'll have to proceed to the further stage of the program. Now I'll request today's chief guest, Srimati Sangeeta Sharma ma'am, member CBIC, to address the gathering. Ma'am is an IRS officer of 1986 batch and is Special Secretary to Government of India and member CBIC. Ma'am has done her post-graduation in English Literature and MPhil in Strategic Studies. In a career spanning 36 plus years, ma'am has held various positions such as Principal Chief Commissioner of Delhi CGST Zone, Chief Commissioner of Mumbai CGST and Customs Zone, CGST Chennai, Pune CGST and Customs Zone. Ma'am also co-chaired the Sectoral Working Group on GST for Travel and Tourism during the rollout of GST in 2017. Ma'am has also worked as Director with the Minister of Defense, and for her distinguished record of service, ma'am was honored with the prestigious Presidential Award in appreciation of her meritorious service. Now I invite ma'am to do the honors, please.
So our eminent speaker of the day, Mr. Gurcharan Das, Principal DG Vigilance, Suchitra Sharma, many senior chief commissioners and commissioners who are here, my colleagues, and so many students and faculty from Delhi IIT. You know, we've come down to the banal from the very sublime, if you're going to hear me speak, because Mr. Gurcharan mentions about how he sat at the feet of a guru, and you know, he was named, but now we have today sat at the feet of the guru and heard his stories. So I do not know how I can value add to what we have said, but I'll make this small little effort. In the first place, this art of storytelling, sir, I think it imbibes wisdom, because it leaves us with, he said it so rightly, it leaves us with thoughts, and we have to process those thoughts through our own crucible, our mind's crucible, to come to our own understanding of what is ethics. So I think all of us in this charmed circle today, lucky enough, fortunate enough to have heard our eminent speaker, will take a little bit of his thoughts with us and be the wiser and be the better human beings, as well as, I hope, better officers for the service. Since I stand for CBIC, I must mention what concerns us today in this week where we celebrate Vigilance Awareness Week. And what is it that we have done so far, the milestones that we have covered, and what we need to do further. Because I must inform the guest speaker as well as Delhi IIT that, you know, to the extent that, yes, as individuals we are concerned with ethics, as individuals we are concerned with dharma, CBIC as an institution is also concerned with institutionalizing ethics. And interestingly, because Suchitra mentioned it, that we are very early pioneers in trying to understand integrity issues because we happen to be part of a global fraternity, the WCO. And when I joined service, I was told that we were already signatories to a particular declaration. It was signed by the World Customs Organizations in Arusha. It's a place in Africa, and it was a declaration on integrity. All the customs organizations of the world came together to document what is it that they need to do. They accepted actually firstly that perhaps this interface of the customs officer with whatever is his customer base does lead to some arbitrage and does lead to discretion. And what is it that we need to do to avoid this play of discretion? And you know, we have talked of these words. We have spoken about simplification of the laws. I think to a great extent, our Customs Act in itself was very simple. Our Central Excise Act we simplified. There was a full effort made somewhere in the 90s in which we simplified the Central Excise Act, simplified the rules, and made them as clear as possible. In GST, the simplification will come through complexity, we know, because there are a lot of voices that have, if you are going to assimilate more than a dozen laws, then you are going to have to bring simplicity through a merger of complexity. We are there in 5 years, but we are not quite yet there. So simplification of laws was one of the objectives of that declaration. The second objective was a certain standardization of your processes so that they become more predictable, so that everybody follows it and is able to understand how to go about things. So standardization of processes was one. A very interesting aspect of it was also automation at a time when possibly automation wasn't understood to the extent that it did, but it was acknowledged that the interface with the person, between two people, would be reduced through automation. Mr. Gurcharan speaks about faceless income tax, but I must inform you, sir, that customs itself is undergoing a huge experiment in faceless. And in the board, we have just taken a review of it. We have understood where the gaps are in faceless customs, but there is a tremendous movement forward. We are learning from our mistakes, and we are going forward, trying to ensure that, again, the arbitrage that does creep in whenever whenever technology tries to take over. And to the credit of the Indian mind, we are extremely innovative in trying to bypass the laws. So there is a lot of work going on in faceless customs as well. So together, from the times that we signed the Arusha Declaration, the customs organization by itself, in itself, is trying its best to make sure that there is an institutionalization, a framework which is given to ensure ethics. Because as officers who govern, and they are very senior officers who head their little formations of customs and GST here as commissioners, will understand that how difficult it is if they were to do this on their own. Individually, the civil services framework itself has introduced ethics as a subject to make sure that it is brought to the forefront. So when the principal DG mentioned that there is a lot of effort going on in governance, and the time span is compressing, I think she's very right, because we have, even within the vigilance setup, done a lot of business process re-engineering, done a lot of compression. Mr. Gurcharan spoke about the fact that it takes 10 years for any legal process to complete and come to justice. It was the same for our officers who were charge-sheeted or who were brought under scrutiny, whether this way or that way. And we have compressed those time frames enough to either give him justice, to make sure that if the person is guilty, then he goes through the punishment. If he's not guilty, then we at least it comes to a halt for him. So there has been a lot of work done for business process engineering, even within the vigilance framework. And today, I think we are at a threshold. There is no doubt that society itself has become more, I would say, this is my sense of it, more aggressive, more questioning. So the challenges ahead of us are a little bit more complex than they were before, because I think to a great extent, learning and knowledge, as we have witnessed today, has gone away. To a great extent, we read, but we don't talk together. So I would say that to excellent idea by Usha and Suchitra to have brought us together for ideating. If we ideate, we will go forward. We will be able to send the message across. I think more and more of these efforts, if they are done, then perhaps the solution solving, the problem solving will be a little bit more deep, shall I say, and the message will be a little better. Wonderful to have an exchange with the fraternity, with the knowledge fraternity of IIT, and to have the scholars here also ask some wonderful questions. So I think all in all, it has been a very, very interesting and a very deep learning experience to have had Mr. Gurcharan speak about ethics. His books, I would recommend, are really, really worthy of reading. If you have not read them, they really explore the subject. I think more than state what is ethics, they explore the subject, and so would you. As a learner, so would you. So I wish you the very best. Thank you for your time, and I don't want to spoil the, what shall I say, the atmospherics today by saying anything more on the subject of vigilance awareness. I wish you well, and thank you again for this time, Mr. Gurcharan, and thank you, DGOV, for this excellent initiative in ideating on what is ethics and how we need to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your encouraging and enlightening words. CBIC has achieved remarkable feats under your leadership and able guidance, and will continue to do so. We assure you that we will stay committed to the fulfillment of your vision, ma'am. Now it is time to place our gratitude to the keynote speaker, Shri Gurcharan Das. I request our chief guest, Srimati Sangeeta Sharma, ma'am, to honor him with a memento. It's a plaque which has the picture of North Block embossed in it. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our DG ma'am, Srimati Suchitra Sharma, to honor sir with the shawl we have. We have got the shawl handicrafted with the name of Shri Gurcharan Das on it. Thank you, ma'am. While we all wish to be on the righteous path, it is easier said than done. However, the essential prerequisite, I must say, is having the fortitude and attitude to be on such path. With this mindset and with the takeaways from the today's talk, I am sure we will have the required willpower. I would like to summarize such strong willpower in the famous line of Shri Dushyant Kumar, कौन कहता है आसमान में सुराख नहीं हो सकता, कौन कहता है आसमान में सुराख नहीं हो सकता, एक पत्थर तो तबीयत से उछालो यारो. Now with these, I request Srimati V. Usha ma'am, Principal ADG, NZU, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anand. When I started sending out the invitations and messages regarding the event, I was asked by someone, what do you want me to come and do? The question set me thinking. We are so caught up in the process of what is to be done when any rule is broken that we forget to remind ourselves about expected behavior, about ethical actions. Today's interaction has been to remind us of just this aspect. Vigilance, as the word denotes, is something which requires us to be alert at all times. We have to be able to check our behavior against the touchstone of what is good. To this end, I would like to heartily thank our distinguished speaker and well-known author, Shri Gurcharan Das, for agreeing to this interaction with us, giving us such a thought-provoking talk sprinkled with so many anecdotes. Thank you very much, sir. Our honored chief guest, member, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, Srimati Sangeeta Sharma ma'am, has always led from the front in all administrative matters. Her aim to modernize vigilance administration with a special focus on preventive activities has breathed fresh air, fresh life into CBIC. Thank you for being our inspiration and joining us today, ma'am. A warm thank you to our Principal Director General, Srimati Suchitra Sharma ma'am, who has guided us in putting together the event and given us her unstinting support for all our efforts. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks to Professor Rangan Banerjee, Director of IIT Delhi, for allowing us the use of this prestigious campus. Without his gracious permission, we would not have been able to conduct this program. A heartfelt thank you to Professor P.V.M. Rao, Dean of Alumni at IIT Delhi. He has helped and guided us in putting together the program and polish its finer details. Thank you, sir. A big thank you to Professor Purnima Singh, Head of the National Resource Center for Value Education in Engineering at IIT Delhi. The participation of her students in large numbers makes us feel that we have also contributed to the education of students in IIT Delhi. Thank you for joining us. As you would be aware, Directorate General of Vigilance has a very small team. So the support from Principal Chief Commissioner Srimati Mallika Arya ma'am and her office has made it so much easier for conducting this function. Thank you, ma'am. Our heartfelt thanks to all the officers from various commissionerates and directorates who have accepted our invitation to participate in this function. A big thank you to all the spouses and family members of our officers who have made the effort to be here today. The participation of a large number of online viewers and their thoughtful questions have enriched the discussion today. Thank you. And lastly, I would like to thank the technical support for the online transmission of the event today on YouTube to reach a wider audience. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it is time for high tea, and it is requested to proceed for the refreshments now. We have high tea in the open area opposite to the library after exiting from the seminar hall on the right side. There is a red carpet to guide you there till the high tea area. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sirs and ma'am. Have a wonderful and happening evening. Thank you.